So this project actually started off last year in Jan at the ADCx hackathon, where Abhinav, my teammate, had this idea, like, why don't we make something that uses like Contrapunk to figure out what the person will play next, or rather like what harmony should be generated next. There are a lot of like harmony generators out there generally, like where you can just play something, figure out like what intervals you want to put on the keys that you're playing, and it'll just like generate those chords, right? Or like you can also like give styles. So the way we are going about it is generally to make sure that counterpoint is the main theory which we are going to use to generate the harmonies itself. Now, why we are using like a rule-based way of like going about this is because like we can just have like more deterministic output. Now in like today's day of like LLMs and AI is like it's so easy to just give something and not get anything that like you want to like get deterministically every time over and over again when you play something. And this is slowly like coming to music with like Suno AI and everything. So this is kind of like an anti-pattern to that. Like we want something that is more deterministic, and hence this sort of like plugin will help us do that, right? So what are the 5 rules that we have that we make sure that we follow when we are generating a harmony? So whenever we are stacking harmonies on top of the pitch that we're given, we make sure that we follow the basic rules, which is like we reject fifths or octaves because they are kind of stable. We want things to be interesting. We want the stepwise motions, the contrary motions. We don't want any dissonant notes, like something that's out of the scale. And the last thing to reject voice crossing is basically we just want to make sure that whenever we are playing something, it stays in that register. Like if I want to continue playing something in the bass, I will play something and everything will be generated on top of that. So before actually go ahead, I would like to just show you a little bit of a demo of what that looks like. So here we have Contrapunk running. And if you can see over here, the input is MPK Mini. So I have a MIDI controller here. Then the outputs are 4 IEC drivers, which link into, which like are directly feeding into this logic instance. I'm not good at logic. I just know how to like route this stuff. And just get the outputs that I need. And the only thing I'm looking for over here, I just want things to sound good. Whatever I play, it should just generally sound good. And I'm no Bill Evans. I can't just like take some melody which is like out of a key and like play something on top. I'm no like jazz pianist to like do that. But I want to be able to have the power to do that, right? So this kind of like helps me with that. So if you see the rules that I've given here. So lo-fi is a preset here, which kind of set things in motion. So here I've given B flat as the key because the backing track is going to be in A sharp or B flat. Then strict is the strict counterpoint rules that we are going to follow. And you can see that we are in A sharp minor. So you can see that I've chosen this key there. Now in the keys itself, you can see that you can see that there are these keys which are like marked in yellow. So it's the 3 black keys, C and F, I think. Yeah. So F and like F, C, and like all the black keys, basically, that's the A sharp minor. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and play. And what I'm doing in the video is basically just kind of like having a good time, listening to the music, just playing the keys, and just trying to make sure that things just sound good. So you can see that the chords that are generated, they just generally sound so good with the backing track. And I'm only playing the green note here. Over here you can see I can give multiple notes and I can get the harmony stacked on top of that as well. So I'm just like messing around. So generally, you can see like, it's able to generate harmonies which just sound so good given the scale. And the thing here is like, we can all like generate harmonies generally, but how do we make sure that it sounds good every time? Because if you could tell, there was like all the chords which came after the other, like they were sounding good with the chords that came before it, right? So that means like we have to make sure that those rules exist as well. Now, before we get on to that part, I just want to like tell what this is built in. So first of all, we are giving like live MIDI input over here. It has basically like like we have optimized for performance. So this is built in Rust, and I also want to make sure that this is just generally available, so you can host it as well or run it locally. Then that's about it. I don't want to go too deep in that stuff. But apart from that, this is basically the landscape we are in right now. There are a lot of tools out there which you can use for different aspects of this. But there is no one tool which kind of like helps you generate the harmonies like live and with like performance. So this kind of like goes into that. Now, how does this work exactly? Now, when this works in two modes, so when we were basically building it, what we needed to do first is make sure that the harmonies are stacked on top. So that is a stateless mode, right? You just need a basic like key, like your note and the key, and then you know like what to generate on top. But in a stateful mode, when you need to be aware of like what's already run, you kind of need to keep like a history, sort of like a sliding window of the intervals that have been played, and the ones that need to come through will come after. Contour is basically showing if the notes need to go up or down. So this basically helps with that. Then what happens is when you're generating these notes, there are a lot of notes to choose from, and there are like close to like 300 notes after you like play one note, and like based on the scale you've given, like you have to choose from all of that. And then after that, like 3 more notes will be like stacked on top, and that will be based on how many MIDI outputs you give. You can give like more than 3 MIDI outputs. Like if you saw the IC like IC output over here, you can see that the voice 1, voice 2, voice 3, and voice 4 is there, right? So what is happening here is the note that you're playing is directly getting routed into voice 1, and then the rest 3 are like built on top. So you can see that sometimes it will omit a note, it will not generate it if it does not make sense, or it does not make sense based on the rules, because just having 4 notes at all times doesn't mean it's always going to sound good. Sometimes you need to like have less and then like create space. So you kind of need to think like go about that in the music writing also generally. So this kind of follows that as well. Then this is what the rules generally look like for each of the different styles that are there. So if you see over here, in the voice leading, I've chosen Bach. So it will try whatever notes it generates, it is going to generate as if like Bach tried to like play the harmonies themselves himself. So this is kind of like showing that. Now you can see that in Palestrina and Bach chorale, we are rejecting the parallel motions completely, and then as we are like moving to jazz, parallel motion is fine, but like we get a penalty, and free is like we just like allow whatever. So free is actually the first version we came out with to like test out. So it was very random, like you'd play something else that wouldn't sound good would get played one after the other, and it all sounded very all over the place. And it's actually thanks to Deo at Riffle, who kind of like helped me out with this, because he wanted like the notes to be played like he wanted the registers to say where they are. Like if I'm playing in like bass, I want to continue playing in bass. So if you go back here, down here, you can see like voice, right? So if I can, so if you can see down here, you can choose the voice that you want to play. Like I can choose to play the bass and all the harmonies will be stacked on top. If I can choose to play the melody itself, if I'm like good at playing piano, I can do that. I would be able to do that, but I usually choose bass because, it's easy to keep like a bass line and then let everything like get generated on top, right? So this kind of also shows like how the stateful and the stateless works, right? In this case, like we need to have a state machine which keeps a check of what intervals have been played and like what the contour needs to be. So one thing is that we need to make sure that this is determinant enough. So the system makes sure that whenever you play the same thing, you get a deterministic output based on what's already been played. So because it's heuristic, everything that you play, like you can probably make the same thing happen again. Like there is one thing I do when I'm playing around with Contrapunk is, I'll play the same note over and over again, and it'll just like change the harmonies. It's like how Bill Evans used to do it. Like he'd like play the same like two notes and like change around it. I don't know how exactly that works, but that's where like I wanted to like get into with the generation itself, because even if they are not thinking about the rules, there are some rules like that are being like applied like subconsciously at least, right? Then we've also added modal interchange. Basically, you should be able to do modal interchange, but this happens on a level where you can choose how far do you want to go away from the key that you're going. So this is something that is also supported. Then there is a humanizer. This is kind of still in the works. It's there, but it's a bit broken. I would suggest you to try it. So one thing that is really good is like sometimes when you're like playing your instrument, you want some humanization to be there. You want it to sound like someone's playing it. But I think the current problem that we have is the outputs are a little too random. So they don't sound like, the same person is kind of like playing the instrument. So we're still figuring out on like how to work on that, and how to make it more human generally. Then this is something we already talked about. This is the constraints that we have for each of the different styles. And we also talked about the determinism. So after we are done with everything, we need to make sure that the determinism is on point. So we also have a fallback mechanism, which is a lexicographic MIDI ordering, which makes sure that the MIDI is ordered based on, it's basically like in a dictionary how everything is ordered like one after the other based on like alphabetical order. This is kind of same, but this is for MIDI. So now, as I had told before, we started off in ADCx India Music Hackathon, and kind of picked this project up, and it kind of had its own life also. Over the last year, I also worked on another version of this, which is node-based like MIDI augmentation. So whatever we already had, but more like in terms of like nodes, just I try to see how this would work in a more Lego-like way, where you just like combine things together and like try to make the rules. But it got a bit hard because I had to figure out how to do the UI and the backend. So I went back to the old method for this. Now, so thank you for just like coming for this talk, and there is more to come, obviously. So the next thing I'm working on right now is the machine learning aspect of it, where I want to convert my guitar signals to MIDI. There are tools already out there for it, but this is something I want to build for myself so that guitar is my main instrument mainly, and it is what I want to use my guitar with Contrapunk so that I can do all of this cool stuff and just jam along with Contrapunk through my guitar. And the only thing stopping me right now is like guitar to MIDI conversion. So that's the next thing I'm actually working on. But feel free to contribute. The project is open source. It's on GitHub. It's under my nickname Wavy Waves and under Contrapunk. Do check it out. And thank you for being here. For the last talk. I hope you enjoyed the demo as well. Thank you so much.